Today's meeting will be about inclusive pedagogy. I'm from ENHANCE University Alliance, and let me share my screen here also that you can see the topic of today. And today we will be dealing with the topic of inclusive pedagogy in action. We titled it Lessons from Award-Winning Educators, a webinar by Marco Adelfio and Francisco Gomes. Francisco will join us later, so we have already Marco here. Hello, Marco, welcome. Just give a sign that you hear me. Yes, let me also put you on the screen that people can see also bigger. In the meantime, we are getting more people. Welcome everyone to the ENHANCE Lunchinar. And so going back to my slides, and in a while I will give you the word, Marco, but let me introduce the ENHANCE Lunchinar's idea. But before we do that, let me do also for this online space, online event today, that we want to create a safe space. So I just want to remind us that diversity is not always visible. ENHANCE Lunchinars are always about topics related to diversity or inclusion in general terms. And the participants, so we have real humans here. And of course, the diversity of us is not always visible. Just be aware of that. And let's meet everyone as their own self, not making any assumptions about any intersection that someone has, like gender or religion or family, disability, ability, and so on and so on. I really want to encourage everyone to participate today with questions, with comments after listening to the experts. We will have even today 2 experts. Mostly we have only 1, so today we have the luxury. And let's listen to understand each other and not to respond, and wander together and learn together. And I think when we consider all this, it will be very nice. And changing my slide again, the goals of ENHANCE Lunchinars, why we organize expert sessions like this with different experts from ENHANCE Alliance, member universities. We want to promote dialogue and also raise critical discussions or foster critical discussions about diversity-related issues in academia. Like today, for example, the topic is very relevant, the topic of inclusive education, inclusive teaching. And we also want to provide some engaging and practical learning. So hopefully you can also learn from our experts today. And the offers are open for everyone, as accessible as possible, hopefully. And it is not only for members of ENHANCE University Alliance, universities, students and staff, but also for others in the whole world, basically, wherever you have internet connection. Just changing the slide, explaining you today's agenda very briefly before our first expert takes over the word. So Marco is already here, and he is going to present his presentation about inclusive pedagogy in architectural education, lessons from Chalmers. And after that, we will be joined at a little bit later time by Francesco, also from Chalmers, University of Technology in Gothenburg in Sweden. And he will also present about role models and belonging in software engineering education. You will have chance to interact with us, with the speakers, asking questions. There are several ways. You can either use the Zoom, not the Zoom link, sorry, the Mentimeter link that I will just post in a second in the chat. You can already see it on the screen, but I will post it in the chat. You can just click on it and open it, and it is anonymous. And we encourage you to ask questions. Or, of course, you can, after the presentations of 2 experts, raise your hand, just use the possibilities of Zoom and speak and ask your question. That's also good. It is not anonymous in this case, of course. Or you can use the Zoom chat as well at the end when we have the discussion and Q&A. And yeah, we will close the session after this with a wrap up. That is it actually from my side. Let me just go back to the event and welcome those people who just joined. Yeah, Marco, are we ready to go? I see you are already connected and hopefully
yes
with the screen share. If you want, you can share your screen.
Yes, of course. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this, and I would like to say that also thank you for calling me expert. I would rather say that I'm a person who is willing to learn. There's never enough expertise about these topics, and it's a continuous learning process. So it's a pleasure for me to share some of the knowledge that I've developed through the years. Chalmers, I am now associate professor in applied urbanism at the School of Architecture, and I will share some glimpses of what we do there. So let me just share my screen.
Yes, your screen is coming. I will just confirm. It's not the presentation mode. Now it is the presentation mode, Marco. It looks good.
Perfect. Great. So I would like to show some ideas about how we work at the School of Architecture at Chalmers University of Technology in Gothenburg, Sweden. Mostly coming from teaching, but we also have a strong connection to research environments. So there will be also some reference to research as well. So I would like to start by saying that we believe, first of all, in pedagogy versus education. So for us, pedagogy is to be together with students and guide on their side rather than someone who is educating someone else. We want our students to be engaged and be co-learners in education. This means different things. First of all, that we work with real situations, real places. We try to understand those places as designers and architects from the perspective of power dynamics and from the perspective of the fact that expertise is always plural and is never only based on one person, but you need to interact with different types of, I would say, human and also non-human beings. So we work on, of course, as a School of Architecture, we work a lot with representation, and representation means both what you represent, but also representation in a social sense. So who is present, who is missing, who is visible, who is invisible. We work a lot with participation, who speaks, who decides, who is the target group, who benefits in design and planning processes. We work with practice, we work with local communities, we work with questions that relate to real situations. And we always work with a reflective mode of thinking, and we expose students to their assumptions, to stereotypes, to hidden biases, because we believe that universities are not just observers, but they actively shape futures. So this means that we want to take into account the question of underrepresented perspectives in design decisions in our school. I'm gonna show you a few examples. We are gonna start with the fact that we work with different topics and we work with different courses. Here you see examples of different kinds, and also there is also there are some facilities which we call here Hammarkullen Lab, which I will show you in a few seconds. Where our educational practice or pedagogical practice is embedded into a local context with the community. So I'm going to start by talking about the fact that Chalmers as a university has facilities in a suburban area in Gothenburg, which has been characterized by stigmatized views and we want to establish a local connection with the community. So we have created some facilities where we work with the local stakeholders. We call them stakeholders, we call them participants rather than only users. We work with participation and co-creation methods in urban transformation. We try to talk about the responsibility of architects in the context of stigmatization, segregation, or development inequalities. And we bring together into these facilities research, learning, and community outreach. So we believe in this strong connection. So we have a process that we work with in one of the studios. I'm going to give you now some examples which represent ways of working. There is a studio and a master level for architects called Community Architecture and Urban Design, which works with areas that were developed in the 60s and 70s in the so-called Million Home Program in Sweden. And these areas are characterized by questions that relate to inequality, segregation, and stigmatization. So we work with a process with students and local stakeholders that goes from co-initiation to co-evaluation. in this course, going through co-analysis, co-design, and co-implementation. And we have collaborated with more than 100 stakeholders over more than 10 years, building things that go from interior design to public space design to urban planning, a lot of different projects. And we adopt this model of co-creation where everyone is part of the development of the proposals. One example of this practice that relate to the topic we're discussing today is the fact that we work with group dynamics. So group dynamics, for us, the group starts with students, then we expand to the local stakeholders. So a way of working with group dynamics is that we have workshops where we try to understand with students to identify their personal strengths, understand themselves, their challenges, their driving forces, understanding the role in groups and their contribution, understanding the power of working in group, and also in planning for the goal and for the expectations of working into groups. So community architecture becomes a way of not only working with the local community, but also understanding design as a collective process. In another course, which is called Emergency Architecture, we expand even more this idea of workshops where we discuss the topic of stereotypes and biases in design. This means that we try to understand like those topics that relate to emergencies, for instance, climate change. Do we have stereotypes? Do we have prejudices? How do we deal when we discuss climate change? Is it something that can be openly discussed? So what we do, we actually work in two ways. One is the students have spontaneous drawing of ideas about climate responsive design, and then they reflect on each other biases of those drawings and build on those drawings to go beyond this idea that that emergencies can be fixed with technologies. We try to understand also the social and individual mental processes that are behind these ideas. And at the same time, we also take into account best practices and or project into climate change, and we try to discuss them critically. Sometimes when we deal with emergencies, we use architecture and engineering solutions that can reproduce unequal access to the solution, actually. So we want to understand the consequences from a societal perspective. We believe that it's very important to have collaborative pedagogy. So we have different methods, as I said before. Workshop is one way. We work with small teams, with local context. We have a peer review culture where students debate and learn from each other's work. We work with manifestos where students expose their collective principles into something that is visible and also powerful. We work with class collage where individual perspectives are assembled in a shared final collage. And we want to promote justice and equity, not only in terms of teaching, but practicing or rehearsing together. So we want to have a structured form of participation, not accidental, where the co-learning process makes the classroom as a site for shared authorship, reflection, and responsibility. In this case, you see that the students work with learning and unlearning. The learning, you have the typical example on the left of a architectural assignment. You analyze the context, you map, you design, and you build. But rather, we want to have a learning process where we rather try to understand people, try to understand humans like plants and animals, try to create some sort of a co-acceptance of the situation, try to understand the simplicity of communication, and try to establish a democratic approach to the design. So we are also altering the common practice of architecture, architectural development of projects here. And here you can see at the end of this course, which is about emergency and different solutions to war, to climate change, to all sorts of emergencies, like students bring together their own ideas into collages that they build collectively as a class. So everyone feels represented by bringing their fragments, differences, and personal positions. A next step that we do is that we don't only design, but also build project. We have a course which is called Dare to Build, where we collaborate between architects, engineers, and local stakeholders. We build structures in public space. We work also with practice. We work with different actors that are related to the architectural profession, and we always want to have a societal impact. So as you see here, there are built examples. And this year, we have also incorporated this idea of this philosophy of ecofeminism, which is bringing together ecological and societal justice, where we have built in a port area in Gothenburg what we call ecofeminist prototypes, so which they are provocative prototypes. So we are going from the theory, so this ecofeminism, which is one of the buzzwords that we tend to use as researchers, to go through workshops. What do you want to co-design that it's social and environmental inclusive? We build prototypes or prototypes, and then we disseminate through research, publications, teaching, and so on. This year, we have built in the Port of Gothenburg 3 types of structures. One is about for bringing birds to a site that was already inhabited by humans. One is called the non-human zone, where humans are not allowed to access the area. And the third one is called the human nest, which is a natural representation of a mode of living, like a nest where humans can interact in the public space. I want to conclude as the last examples. We also have a master thesis profile, which is called Society, Justice, and Space, where students work with justice and the relationship with space. They work with different methods: field work, participatory work, and norm critical reflection. And in this case, students were working. There is an example which is quite provocative. It's called Radical Justice, where students were working with neglected species and how it's possible to give justice also to those who are considered as sub-nature in a negative way, which is also very kind of a bad word to use, but there is a book that uses that word, so it's not my terminology, to be clear. So what happens is that we have different set of tools where we work with real places, stakeholders. We want to make power dynamics visible. We treat methods as pedagogy, not only design, not only construction, but everything is part of the pedagogy. We build reflective loops, and we also have this ecofeminist research lens where we bring together environmental and societal justice. So I am done with my presentation. I hope it was not too long here, but I thought it was important to have a kind of different examples of how we work in practice.
Thank you so much, Marco. Very interesting, really. I was amazed. I am amazed. We will come to that in the discussion. You said also things like pedagogy comes before education. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Yeah, let's discuss this also. Very good. In the meantime, we were also joined by some other faces, other people. So that's why any questions that you might have to Marco, and just in a while after Francisco's presentation, also to him. So today we have the luxury to have 2 experts from Chalmers. You can edit in Menti link that is in the chat, or use the Zoom possibilities to speak. But this comes later in the discussion. Thank you, Marco. So if it is okay for you, let's do any questions and comments later, also after Francisco's part. Then we have 2 presentations and we can have a general discussion. But in the meantime, I see also Francisco here. Hello, give a sign that you hear me. Francisco,
hello.
Welcome.
I hear everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yeah, I also put you on the stage, then everyone can also see you. Hopefully I can see you.
Wow, intimidating.
Very good. Yeah, all right. So Marco just presented. Nice that you also joined us, Francisco, also from Chalmers. I did not mention in the beginning, but I think it was last year or a little bit longer even, you both won this Inclusion Pedagogy Award. So that was like for us the motivation really to invite you. So we are very curious also to hear from your pedagogical approach, let's say, in your presentation. If you want to share your screen for your part,
yes,
we can leave you the stage. Yeah.
Let me then, because since you guys can see me, I'll just do a short introduction. Yeah, I'm Francisco. I'm an associate professor here at Chalmers. My main area is software engineering. That's the main area of teaching, both my education that I teach and I do research on. And yes, as you've mentioned, what I'm going to present now is connected to one of the elements that I use in the teaching that in this case was one of the motivations for my the pedagogical prize that Marco and I and we received last year here at Chalmers. So I'll share my screen.
Very
And
nice.
the topic around the approach that I use to teaching is still connected to inclusion, which is using role models. Can you guys see the slides? Like, yeah.
Yes, it works. Looks good in the presentation mode. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I think this idea of belonging, I think the key words in the title should be conveying what the approach should be like and the target and the importance. So role models, this idea that we have people and different reference figures that inspire, they can be actual or they can be fictional. Like one of my role models is Professor Xavier, if anyone else here is a fan of the X-Men as well, right? So, and I also have many others, including colleagues as well, right? And family members, because I do think that the humanity aspect of who we want to be and human values, they are dissolved in our work ethics. And that contributes the belonging, how a student feels in the class, that they should be here, they are here to listen to the teacher, the university is their space. There is a focus on software engineering education. That layer is mainly to convey that STEM is still a male-dominated field, so there is quite a homogeneous group of students that we cater. And with that, that introduces some barriers to the sense of belonging for students that don't fit that homogeneous even if homogeneous, it's quite multidimensional as well, right? In my case, I really struggled with belonging. So for context, and it's part of this presentation, like there's a character here that any coincidence is a mere, any similarities are mere coincidence. Like in my case as a gay man in the computer science education, even though I did identify as a male, when it came to my experience as a student, there were other aspects of my lived experience that really struggled. It really introduced barriers for belonging. So I'll try to explain this with like the content of the pedagogical practice that I do to motivate this a bit with talking about two students, Tom and Tina. Okay. Tom and Tina, they're first year students. They're very excited to learn computer science, programming, or for this case, let's go with computer science, but this is applicable to any type of education, really. Tom, he loves video games. He really does not like to engage in conflict. He's quite shy and calm, but he's social. Like he can talk, like he likes making friends, but he really prefers to be by himself. He's also figuring out. He's a young adult, 17, 18. Like he realizes that he's a gay man. He's attracted to other men, but at the same time, he's really unsure how to navigate that. He's private. He's afraid that people will find out, right? So he's what we call the closeted gay man, right? Tina is another student. Tina, in this case, she's really loves math. She comes from this background that she was a top student in her high school with great math grades. She loves reading books. She also is quite well outspoken. She was class leader. She really liked to engage in competition. She gets a lot of passion when it comes to physical activities. But she likes math, but she did not do programming before. Both Tom and Tina have no prior exposure to programming or computers for that matters. They are basically on Instagram all the time, but they don't know much about creating technology. And then they get very excited to go to their first programming lecture with all of the other colleagues. And then the teacher, like trying to just see the different levels of the student, as these days we get all sorts of students that are already very apt with technology. He just asks, like the first topic is algorithms, how to write a program. And then he asks, hey, does anyone here is familiar with any algorithm? And among the students, some of them very excited that they've been doing programming on the side for many times, even they learn in their high school, like they already say, oh, I know Tower of Hanoi. Another student, yes, I know insertion and merge sort. And then both Tina and Tom, they're like, what? What is an algorithm? I've heard that word, but I don't understand. Am I supposed to know this before I start? Am I already behind? How do I engage? I don't want to ask question. Will people realize something? Like, how should I ask this question? And then other student, not even Tina. Tina hides her calm because she's quite confident and I'm like, okay, I'll fake it until I make it. But Susan here says, who is annoy? Like she's confused. I've never heard that word. Am I supposed to know this? And this feeling of kind of like already starts in the beginning, and the teacher was not ill-intended, right? It's something that we want to know for us to understand the distribution of students that we have. We need to ask questions, but that already introduces the minute that we step in a classroom and we try to assess and surface the difference between students, that already introduces two big risks that comes with inclusion. Imposter syndrome, which is quite common to experience, especially among teenagers these days, that they'll think, okay, I'm going to start comparing myself with others. Should I have done programming my summer? Should I know something? Does the teacher expect this to me? And then, like, okay, I need to fake it now that I know this, right? And alienation. There's ours, us, there's them. There's people that know programming, people that don't know programming. There's a lot of different barriers as well that surface in these types of interactions between teacher and student that simply are a consequence of not having a established sense of belonging. Because if there is belonging and trust in a group, then it's okay to raise questions. And then Tom can say, hey, was I supposed to know this? Why are you asking this, right? But if Tom is shy and many of the students are just getting to know each other, we usually don't take that social initiative, right? And that is something that we actually saw in a study. So I actually interviewed a bunch of women and non-binary students in our software engineering program. And that's not just first years, it was across all years, including masters. And here are some examples of their experience that they report. Like, for instance, one of the students says, I think I knew about the stereotypes before applying to Chalmers, and that was probably one of the reasons why I didn't choose the software bachelor. So this student, she went with another bachelor on industrial economy, even though she was interested in learning software engineering and programming. She already thought, okay, there is already all of these images of the Chalmers students that I see in the ads and everyone, they all look the same, a bunch of guys with a bunch of hats. So, and then there was the reputation. So she already said, I'm not going to belong there. I'm not going to fit in, right? Another student said in the classroom and stuff, like there is a lot of guys and there's always asking questions, especially in the first year. I thought that was very, I guess, true. It had something to do with gender, that the men came across as more confident, that it was male dominated. So even this difference was very apparent to her, even though it might have not been apparent to the teacher or the male students that get excited. As soon as you feel like it's a environment of people like you assume that people will behave like you. So you start, it's easier to adopt to the norms, like how to ask questions, how to phrase body language, and all of that, right? And then even one of the women said, yeah, to fit in, I try to be a little bit passing, right? So trying to imitate a lot of these behaviors that are typically like culturally male or engineering students in order to avoid conflict or potential. And this is a very big problem in terms of identity, right? Now we need to really fake behaviors that we're not used to because we fear not feeling included. And those other things came up, such as stereotypes and then different like conditional belonging. The fact that, for instance, and I myself experienced that I had to pretend that I liked football because otherwise I couldn't engage with my colleagues. Being I'm from Brazil and football is a big thing, but I was never really interested in it. But a lot of the boys in my class liked it, so I had to adapt. And then a lot of the questions that we had, until a teacher once said to me, hey, I want you to do a work about one important person in computer science. And I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar with different role models in computer science, but one of my favorite is Alan Turing. And she said, Alan Turing, he's a mathematician, British mathematician from like, yeah, 30s, 40s, 50s. Like he's very well known for his work with the war. And then his creation of algorithm, he's what we call the father of computer science. And then I was fascinated. Wow, this is the guy that came up with all of this until my teacher said, okay, so you guys need to do an essay about Alan Turing and his work about defining what is an algorithm. And you get bonus point if you do something, if you write a few sections about his private life, about the fact that he was a gay man. When she said that, and me being a closeted gay man, just like Tom, I thought, oh, do you mean that the guy that founded this field was also a gay guy like me? That really got me excited to get to know more about him. And then the more that I learned, the more I understood as well the layers and the complexity of being a gay man in that field that he experienced decades ago, and they're still in this era, right? So, or my teacher also said, okay, let's now talk about Ada Lovelace. And then we're all, okay, who is this person? She's like, she's a mathematician, but she's also, and she phrased it like that. she's the first man to program a computer. She actually had this phrase like the first man to program a computer was a woman. And even though we're not supposed to phrase things like that, I remember when I did my education in the early 2000s, I heard it all the time growing up. The first man in the moon, the man to discover the Americas, the man to come up to invent things. It was the first man, the first man. And I think she did it very wisely when she phrased it that the first man to program a computer was a woman. That made two things. It established, like, okay, this is not, so she said, okay, Ada Lovelace is the first computer programmer, but she also got everyone thinking, yeah, why do we say that the first man and why do we now are so surprised when it's a woman, right? So, and she did those things and that really inspired me as a teacher. And then as years of teaching, I realized, especially when asking students, all me and my colleagues, because of this teacher, we knew that about Alan Turing, Ada Lovelace, and then all of the other figures. And then why is this important? Because these types of inspirations and aspirations of students, as soon, especially in the first year, have a high impact on their motivation. By trying to find people that have achieved impressive things in the field helps you get motivated to also be and follow in their, like, get a reference model to say, okay, if they did it, I can also do it. I can also be successful. And there's some studies that show that role models are very good for that. And then the more that I started, even as a student, to just to choose research, who are the other LGBTQ or the other women or people of color, I found that there is computer science has a lot of brilliant mind, all of them from different like pioneers, that they are not a white straight bald man, like that they don't fit what you would usually see at universities or high level professors. And I don't never remember seeing that when I was studying math or physics, and most likely there are, but I really felt impressed how actually you see diverse people, diverse faces, and diverse experiences in the faces of the brilliant minds behind computer science progress. And then I started to talk to my colleagues back then, and even as a teacher, I would see the impact that has with the students. And that's what inspired me to then ask the students, by the way, do you guys know these people? And I sent a survey to 151 Chalmers students in different programs that we have, all of them within computer science, so engineering, computer, so hardware, software, interaction design, data science, also computer science. And then I've asked them, okay, do you know these people? And surprisingly, more than 90% of them knew about Alan Turing. So there's 10% that didn't know, right? And I even had questions such as, do you know like that he was gay? So not all of these people knew that he was gay. I think it was only 80, 70 to 80% knew about him being gay. Or Ada Lovelace, you see already that decreases a lot. And then from other people, so these are the absolute numbers of students, and these are the percentages. So then it really decreased how they actually knew, and these are throughout all of the years. So I'm kind of like, people don't have reference models anymore, and that's what really motivated me to bring these people to the classroom. And that was one of my proposed toolkits, is that my first slide, I said, if they don't know it, I'll make them know it because it's good for them. Then they can search their own. So then at the beginning of, these are the first slides of my classes. At every lecture, I begin with a person, a summary of their contribution, sometimes link both historical figures, but also like current researchers in the area that really fit minority groups. I don't pose them as minority. There is an interesting case that I can mention during the discussion that happened during a course evaluation. I just present them, tell their work, and I tell how they inspired me. And I think that's a good exercise, even for me as a teacher, to keep finding inspirational figures in other colleagues and trying to bring that to work, because these human values, they have a big impact on student engagement, motivation, and attendance, which is something that only we can, that only humans can bring. That is something that ChatGPT and other AI really cannot replace. That feeling of finding and listening, like inspiration in the voice, right? So I think that's one of the reasons that I started to do. And then with that, it surfaced a lot of good results from the course evaluations. Like, yeah, this is some of the students that also mentioned the impact of some of the students in the same interview study that I've mentioned. Like when you include role model, encouragement, and creating the sense of community, the students really start to talk about how that affects their motivation. So one of the participants, she said, I do have male friends who are working in the field, and they've been a huge support system so that they feel like, okay, we can do this together. So some of the students said they really appreciate when the teachers mention during examples, like what about non-binary? A typical example that we have here in Sweden is that the social security number doesn't have a non-binary marker. The gender marker is binary. Then when we talk about processing and collecting data, I use those examples, and that triggers a lot of cool discussions about exclusion in digital systems. So, and then the byproduct of that is that then the students think, okay, so I have a value now as a stakeholder in these systems as well, right? So it gets them extra motivated. And the impact of role models, like students said, yeah, I was following one girl that was studying software actually, that there is they create now, students create, become influencers, podcasts, and they start to inspire other students. So even if they're not part of the same class, they really encourage each other. And that has become quite interesting and magical to see. So those are the three recommendations that I can give. So inspiration as a design mechanism for classes, and that has been very good. I would say foster inspiration, bring like your own personal experience is very valued as well. So share if you're comfortable with some of the barriers that you face, some other people are listening. Take in the initial of the lecture 5 minutes, it's not longer than that, and I share someone inspiring in your field. You never know who you're going to contact, and I think that's quite effective, especially for getting new researchers and PhD students into the loop, because then they see that there's a whole field as well that can happen beyond just teaching, or people that made contributions. People that are making contributions is very important as well. And show, like really put a face, put a voice, put a video, because at the end of the day, we don't know which aspects, which dimension of our identity will trigger that feeling that I want to know more. How can I be like you when I grow up? I think that's quite a powerful thing to listen as a teacher, right? Oh, I want to be like Alan Turing when I grow up, right? Even though I hear this, I said that to my teacher once. We were all a bunch of 18, 19 years old, and I had this teacher that she presented these people. She's a role model to me these days, and we would all joke. She is a very popular teacher back in Brazil, and she would say, we would all say, I want to be like her when we grow up, right? And that is irreplaceable. So that's my main takeaway, and I guess we can go to a discussion. I'll stop sharing.
Yes, also amazing. Great, Francisco. Really nice. I enjoyed this session a lot, having this in both of you, Marco and Francisco. Thank you so much. Yeah, very different fields, different approaches, but all in the big frame of how to do it, do education more inclusive. So I heard different aspects, very good, interesting aspects. Yeah, I will first do the questions from Mentimeter. In the meantime, we were joined by more people, so welcome to the ENHANCE Lunchinar. So we have just listened to experts from Chalmers University of Technology, from ENHANCE Alliance. So let me share my screen. I think now, no one, you are not sharing it anymore, exactly. So then I will just put the first question on the screen. So hopefully you can read it. So let me see. So we have right now 3, but the audience can add more questions. You can also add them just in Zoom chat. That is also totally fine, or just raise your hand and speak. We are not a very big group, so we can also just discuss. We still have some time. So the first question is, let's see for who it is and what is this. Do we need more of this pedagogy before education approach at our universities? Must this be standard? I think this refers, Marco, to the aspect that you addressed, but feel free to start first. And Francisco, you can also answer if you feel like. But Marco, over to you for this question.
Thank you. No, I think that what is important beyond the words is the approach that we have. So it's because pedagogy, originally the word comes from Greek, where someone was bringing a child to school. So it is I mean what is important is that we we make people shine with their own potentials. So this means that we can give a hand when they need a hand, and can let them thrive by themselves as much as possible at the same time. So it is more being on the side. I really think that that's really important. This is what for me it's student-centered learning, where you actually take into account the individual needs of the person more than the needs of the teacher. So I really think it's this is what matters essentially.
What matters? Yeah, I like it a lot. I love it actually, and I think this is something really to be used more and more, the student-centered. But you also mentioned different approaches, concrete approaches. uh, lots of about participation, right? And I think that is really, it reminded me, but maybe for later we go through the questions. It reminded me also the principles of non-formal education a lot. So which is, I think, very much fitting here as well, what you are mentioning. Good. Great examples of inclusive practices from both of you in the chat. Yeah, I can just sign that. And Francisco, please, if you want to add to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I would do a different phrasing of that. I think it's very difficult to disassociate pedagogy and education. I would say pedagogy before content for sure. And I think education should not just be content driven, right? I'm a big believer of Paulo Freire, which is one of my role models as he's a pedagogical science actually from Brazil. And he has this idea that education needs to be liberating. We need to teach, when we teach students, we not only need to teach content, we need to teach that content in the context of society and politics and everything that they're experiencing today. So it's not just about, let's say, teaching people how to, let's say, write a program, but also, okay, you're going to write a program and that program is going to make your boss rich and then they're going to be richer. And then will they invest in the company and your competence development, or will they just like end the ethical consequences of this? So I think Paulo
Yeah.
Freire is a big reference for me and all of these different pedagogical frameworks.
Yeah.
So I think understanding pedagogy as a science is something that should be a standard. I think we undervalue sometimes we underestimate the value of pedagogy as a science
Yeah.
in the education of learners, of teachers, sorry.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. As a representative of Enhance Alliance, also I would also really wish what you just said, that we somehow integrate or at least consider more in Enhance Alliance. Just to use that approach also would be great to discuss further. But I will now change the question. We have right now 3 questions at least so far, but you can also add more. So the next one I have here is, okay, for Francisco, do you discuss these gender topics with your students? What is their reaction? Okay.
Fantastic. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. And I think most of the time there is a bias because we teach in Sweden, and in the program that I teach specifically, it's a fundamentals of programming course. So it's the first course that they do. I also teach in the masters. So both the masters and the bachelor course that I teach, they're international. So I do get 150 students, and then 50 of them are international, 100 are Swedish, but even Swedish, you have a lot of second generation. So I must admit that I'm biased in the sense that I'm teaching a topic about inclusion in a quite diverse class. We have 40% women among our students, which is impressive. Like very few other programs at Chalmers have that, and international, right? So I think it's diverse and it's in Sweden, right? So Sweden is a society that already values that. So there is already a lot of things that facilitate that discussion. One of the steps of that research, the paper that I linked in the slide that we did and we published, was a survey. We did a typical study that's done in psychology and economy that we gave students 2 curriculum describing 2 software engineers. And we had the exact same discussion. One we named Hannah, and the other one we named Hans. And then we had a set of questions of, do you believe that Hans or Hannah, like whoever got the form, is a good leader, is a good programmer? Do you want to work with Hannah? And then the thesis students running that project, they even commented, like, Francisco, we don't see a lot of difference. Are our students too woke these days, right? So I think there is that initial bias that we are in a Swedish society. There were interesting findings in that study, but we do have that discussion and the reaction is quite open. But I think it's because it's taught in Sweden. I don't think that this is necessarily as
Yeah.
received in different countries.
Did you also have in Sweden even also some like negative or backlash or whatever we call it reactions?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. There was once and it happened once for a student that he was basically reinforcing the binary aspect, like he was kind of referring to sex basically. Oh, there's only male and female. And then I had to go into a discussion of disassociating sex and gender, which turned out to be quite an interesting dialogue. There were other students as well that when we were talking on each, I ended up putting some requirements on what they needed to do with their systems to include aspects of accessibility and then like inclusive language. And then some students, they were like, oh, you're asking us to do this stuff, but it's not valued. And then there was that type of resistance in a sense.
I see.
But that opened for more dialogues, and they happen very rarely, but it did happen.
More dialogues, exactly. And Francis, Marco, do you want to add something to that? I mean, even though you both are doing your work in different fields, architecture and software, so I think I heard also participation from your side, for example, lots of participatory approaches. How is it with dialogue, with discussing with the students about all these inclusivity topics?
I mean, I think what we practice is in different ways, of course, and when we start the course, we always tell the students
Yeah,
this is everyone's opinion is welcome here. It's not only welcome, but it's a contribution to the entire classroom. So
yeah,
it is extremely important that everyone feels free to be who they are and who they what they want to express. And one example, okay, we have, for instance, these course evaluations at universities at the end of a course. I always say course evaluation is a tool, but what is more important is that we have a dialogue and discuss things here together, and we solve things and we address things together. And we start this from the first day, and there will be no judgment about different opinions. So we are. I think what is important is to be outspoken and say this very openly. And if you don't have the tool, you should be humble to ask someone else who has communication tools to come to your classroom and help you with that, I think.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Francisco, please.
Yeah, can I be the advocate of the devil? And that could be an interesting discussion. I'd love to hear your perspective, Marco, on this thing that I keep thinking. This idea that we need to create spaces so people are vocal, but being vocal sometimes has some personality biases as well, right? Sometimes students are shy, they're quiet, they're introverts, that they are already drained with energy by being a field class. So how can we make sure if we create mechanisms such that outspoken people are only the ones speaking, don't we silence the ones that don't fit that? Don't we shift the preference then for those students that are more? It's one of the reasons why when I talk to company, I hate when they say the word, we want people with passion. And I'm kind of like, that's some people don't have the personality or they are not like that. And I don't think it should be a negative, right? So how can we create a space such we will allow for all voices to be heard? I find that quite challenging.
I mean, I think we allow for different configurations. So we have different settings. We say you can talk in pairs, you can talk with the classroom, you can have an exchange of the talk with the teacher, you can talk with your mate. So we give different options, and we never force people to speak, because that's also counterproductive, I would say. But by saying that that we respect everyone, we are at least setting the tone about the fact that they will not be judged, even if they don't speak, you know. So
Yeah.
that's what is, I think, what is important.
And you say it in the role as a teacher, educator, in that kind of moderator or facilitator role of the group that you have with you, right? I think that is also important, how teachers react or behave or show themselves, moderate.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thanks. I think they went deeper about this question about how they react and so on. And there is something in the chat. Let's see if this is directly connected to now. Otherwise, I have one more question from Mentimeter. Nice to see you, Maria. I'm very happy to have the two of you working at Chalmers. Yeah, I think I'm also very happy to have such experts in our alliance, in this case from Chalmers, sharing our experiences. Yeah, and dialogue with Enhance Alliance. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Tusen tack already, but we are not finished yet. So let's see what is the next question. At least one more is on Mentimeter. That is called, okay, what do you recommend to other teachers/educators to do it better? Okay, maybe both of you. I heard, Francisco, in your slide, some recommendations, but maybe, yeah, feel free to vote from both of you. What do you recommend to other teachers and educators?
I think trust is the trickiest but most important element to build with students, and how to do that, right? Because there is a power imbalance the minute that we step in the class. And then we can enforce trust via authority sometimes. You trust authority. Typically, if you trust the organization, you trust the authority. We do things because we trust the judges, we trust the police, we trust like the government, right? Allegedly. So authority can happen. I don't think authority is effective these days, and especially with the newer generation. I think honesty and transparency are a bigger element of trust when there is a power imbalance. So I would recommend teachers to embrace the fact that we don't know everything. I think students will trust people that they relate, and continuous learning, insecurities, vulnerabilities are things that are relatable. And I think especially with the
Relatable.
new
Yeah.
generation. So I'll say one way to build trust is to be open sometimes and say, yeah, I don't know the answer to this. I'll research and check later. Or acknowledge, even maybe if a person is comfortable in sharing. I always tell my students, I was so nervous when I first started in my first year. I almost failed these courses. I try to diffuse that image that sometimes we have that the teacher is up there in a pedestal, like perfect, and I'm not that. So I think trying to do some of that in the beginning to instill trust is
Mhm.
very helpful
Yeah.
to then create a sense of belonging.
Yeah. Just one. How do you show vulnerability? How do you show that? How do you? Yeah.
I tell the students the courses that I failed, the exams
Exactly.
that I struggled. I tell
Mm-hmm.
them that, like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
did not know any programming. I hated my database courses. I don't teach databases, and I tell you guys have a good database teacher. I can say that, but I say I didn't have one, so I don't.
Yeah.
I'm honest about my experience as a student, and I tell them, and then I even also them, and I had a lot of privilege in the sense that I live with my parents, like I didn't have to find a job, was
Yeah.
not on
Yeah.
a visa. So I think opening the space for these discussions, acknowledging their
Yeah.
hindrances and my hindrances, just makes everyone more relatable.
I see.
And I think that sometimes is diffusing the authority, and then some teachers fear that. I know I fear that when I first started teaching, but my
Yeah.
experience has shown that this has more, it's a risk that's worth taking here in
Mm-hmm.
Sweden at least. And it was in Brazil when I was a teacher there as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Francisco. Obrigado. And Marco, over to you. What is your take on the question? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I would say one important thing is not
Mm-hmm.
to stick to the stereotypes of your discipline, because it very often happens that like for instance, I heard like teachers in different contexts saying, "Ah, but I teach mathematics. I don't know how to work with social skills or things like that." I mean, it's first of all, it's not everyone. I mean, it has I think qualities that are maybe and
Yeah.
not related to the technical aspect of our profession, I would say. And but I think what is important is to the first quality is to be humble and admit our limitations. If we admit our limitations, it's a good starting point. Everyone has limitations. Everyone has things to. We all have to improve in certain things,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes also what is important is to play with your techniques. Like we use a lot of role play, for instance, where you put yourself into another role, or
Mm-hmm.
you can play with your with the technical skills. For instance, when I was saying if you don't want people to be outspoken, you can ask them to draw things, right? So
Draw.
you can we work with sketches. People can
Mm-hmm.
sketch things, and they can be even anonymous sketches, but they still let things out in another way. So there are different techniques. I think
Yeah.
you can really play and make a playful use of the discipline in a way that it becomes not superficial, but actually being playful can be a lot deeper than
Yeah.
other things, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Very nice. Very useful and practical, and also with big ideas. Good approaches. Thank you. I'm very curious about actually your toolboxes, where you have them. Share the links, please. And by the way, the presentations will be put in our public Padlet for everyone here. Also for later, for those who are registered but did not make it today for different reasons. So just keep this in mind, please. Thanks, Marco and Francisco, so far. Let me just check. There was also something in the chat, but some comments. I am in pedagogy, Hannah says, and in my seminar on participation in school, I tell my students participation is not just about speaking up. Writing, voting, and taking a stand are also forms of participation. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, Francisco confirming that. Yeah, agreeing. Yeah, thanks for that. So okay, now it's coming more from the chat. Yeah, so but all positive so far, and I think also very inspirational in that sense. Thank you. Yeah, let me check for the last time if there is something that I missed from Mentimeter. It is not the case. If still in the last second when I say bye and you have the question of your life, you can still send it to me. I will make sure asking Francisco and Marco if they can maybe just give an written answer, which I am happy to add to the follow-up email that will come, of course, after today's session. And yeah, maybe give our two speakers a digital and what way, creative way of applause, right? Really, thank you for both of you. It was very inspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. But we are not just finishing yet, so still a couple of minutes. Let me just wrap up. Before I forget this, I'm really inviting everyone, still 16 people here, to complete the evaluation form when we finish the event. It is really a short one. Because then we can also learn, even though this was now really actually the last ENHANCE Lunchinar in this series of several events before the summer. But I'm really very happy to finish this very nice series of events with two experts, really that inspired me also personally. And it seems you inspired also some other people here for sure, for you both. And let me share my screen again. And that is basically here. And exactly. I really invite you all, so everyone here, to follow what ENHANCE Alliance and their member universities are doing. Chalmers is one of the 10 ENHANCE member universities, and then today we saw how good inclusive education look like there. And I think that is really something to learn from these experts, in this case from Chalmers. And really follow also ENHANCE Alliance social media channels, and also register the newsletter of our University Alliance. But if you have any questions, also you can always reach out to us. Just go to ENHANCE University EU homepage and then basically find your contact person. If you are from one of the ENHANCE universities, if you are from anywhere else, you can just mail me, and I'm happy to guide you. Having said that, thank you, everyone, and see you soon again. And it was a pleasure to welcome you, and Marco and Francisco. Thanks again. Tusen tack.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Mehdi.
nice day, everyone. Bye bye.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.